Hello and welcome to Just Your Normal Misfit. I'm Ann Thomas, and with me today is Vishnu Rao. Vishnu is a strategist, a storyteller, and a late diagnosed neurodivergent adult who always knew his brain worked slightly differently, long before there was the language or the labels to explain it. His story carries the familiar threads: the anxiety, the depression, the pressure to live up to a high performer tag. It also carries the turning point. The moment the diagnosis came through, it met self understanding and then led to a space for healing, motivation, and a shift in how he shows up for the world. In this episode, we talk about the messy but beautiful process of unlearning the survival mode. We talk about grief, relief, clarity, creative superpowers, and yes, we talk about how Vishnu went from ideation paralysis to actually acting upon his ideas. This is an episode for every adult who's always felt too much, too intense, or just not enough. I hope this episode gives you a lot of insights to improving your life. Welcome to Just Your Normal Misfit, Vishnu, and it's really nice to have you today. And as a late diagnosed neurodivergent, how does it feel to finally have a label to what you knew was something amiss at some point?
I know that possibly the societally accepted response is to say, "Oh, I feel so relieved," and all of those things. But realistically, I don't know. The only thing that's different is now I'm on some form of medication. What is interesting though is that when I started telling people about the diagnosis, almost all of them went, "I knew it." I was annoyed. Okay, I'm going to be very frank. I was very like, if you knew it, you saw it all this time. Maybe, just maybe, you could have told me this. Oh, yeah, for the past 5, 6 years, I've had this feeling about you. Bro, thanks for the heads up. Maybe she could have told me a little earlier. I could have gone and gotten tested. Maybe the last 5 years wouldn't have been as traumatic as they were. But no, we never knew how to tell you. What if you don't accept it? This and that, and all of those things. Yeah, so after I got this, I remember that when I was, I think, 9, my parents had taken me to a therapist there where we had both an IQ and an EQ test and things like that. And I believe that the person there had recommended some sort of medication at that time as well, but my mother was all about or rather, the prevailing notion around mental health at that time was that it's just a lack of discipline or structure, which is why that needs to be increased. And so I think as a result of it, as a combination of a bunch of factors, it took me until I was 40 to really realize that something could be wrong, mainly because the masking was getting harder and harder to do. As in, when I was a kid, it was easy to follow the high performing, the highly rewarded behaviors that I saw other kids doing and just repeat that. But as you get more and more into the working world, there are multiple different behaviors, and you don't know which one to actively follow, which one to mimic when you're masking, and how to fit in. So at some point of time, it becomes like that scene in, I think it's the Twilight Zone or something like that, where there's a multitude of different faces that keep getting formed and nothing is clear. So then the mask just breaks eventually and then leads to either very burnout level things or catastrophic occurrences. So that's where I said, okay, you know what, might as well go ahead and do it. The thing was, I didn't realize how tired I had become, which now I've suddenly started looking at differently. Because earlier it was just like, oh, you know what, this is too much work, there's just so many things. And then you tend to trivialize mental load in a way, which now, thanks to the diagnosis and like the reading up about it, and then all of the assorted support sources and things like that exist, it has made me, I won't say relook, it has made me understand and sort of reposition the way that I work or the way that I think in a way that has reduced a lot of fatigue. Because earlier, what used to happen for me was Monday to Friday was work and it was really long hours. And then on the weekends, I used to just sleep. And I used to think that's because I was tired. But turns out that was just my brain putting me to sleep because it was bored. So that level of control has been very useful, which brought back some amount of routine into my life. It's not just sleeping whenever there's nothing to do or feeling sleepy or feeling lethargic and those kinds of things. How do you do the work from home? The only time I did it was when we were forced to do it in Now, because I've taken a sabbatical, I'm trying to do things by myself, which means that I'm choosing to work from home. But how do you do it?
What does that mean? What is the
I mean,
question?
in the sense that whenever going to office for me was a sense of structure, was a sense of routine and method and things like that. Without that, it's very hard to stay disciplined. I do all of the things. I have a Notion calendar. I have all of those tools and everything set up, and I have RD alarms that remind me this is what you're supposed to be doing at this time. This is what you're supposed to be doing at this time, which is substituting for people. But then it's still so much effort as opposed to like just going to office where someone would just shout out and say, "Hey, I need this. Where is it?"
Yeah,
So that's what I mean.
so I have been extremely independent since the beginning of time, in the sense that even when I was working at an office, it's usually I was handling production to a large extent. Even when I was going to Srishti for 4 years, it was you running things. Your calendar is completely dependent on you. So where you work really
Hmm.
doesn't matter as much because the team for the day is dependent on you. So I don't know how I have managed it, but it also is my personality where I need a lot of independence. And like having somebody manage my day is, I don't think I would have survived that structure at all. So I sit in the morning, I know what needs to be done today, I'll have my goals, I'll have my plans. This allows me to manage my kids' lives, manage other people's lives independently. Like the moment I have to sit in one place and work, I don't think I will be able to. Though I sit in the same place and work every day, and I have my workspace and I have separate spaces in my head. The idea that if you tell me I have to come into an office,
Protest.
yeah, my mind might protest. And but this has really worked for me. I didn't know what I was getting into. It's been 5 years at Arya, and I was getting into agri-tech. And like I said, it's just been the freedom to do what you want. You're building your own team, you're building your own base, etc. Yeah, I get where you're coming, where you can get distracted with 100,000 tabs open, but since there's always somebody's call and you have deadlines on things, I think deadlines are great that way. So you know that these things need to be finished. You create your own structures. So
Hmm.
even though
I
externally you don't have deadlines, you put yourself that these three things need to go out today or stuff like that.
I think that's good advice. It's actually quite helpful because I moved away from advertising and more into strategy and planning and decided to give it a go for myself, right? So a good part of that is sitting around and doing a lot of thinking. Now, the problem with just like sitting around and doing a lot of thinking is it's such an airy fairy term, right? You can just be staring at a screen and someone comes and asks you, "Hey, what are you doing?" "I'm thinking, bro." But yeah, I keep putting artificial deadlines on myself, and I recently got my first client. So every time I'm with her, I'm giving her a thing saying, "Okay, today you're going to get this." And she's like, "Shouldn't I be asking for you this?" I was like, "But you're not. Therefore, I am giving it to you."
The other piece about that again is when you have a client and that is your only client, you tend to give them a lot of importance and a
Hmm.
lot of your time. So put a number to your time saying that this task, again, ADHD completely struggles with time management. So if you work backwards, saying that, okay, this person's paying this much. So that means that you should only ideally give them this much time, and you can go plus and minus. Flexibility is not the question, but you also know that more than means you're not doing something that you should have been doing, which is getting yourself a new client.
Hmm.
So that piece where you say that a client pays X and hence has these many hours of my time, which leaves me two more slots to get two more clients, which is what will cover
Yeah.
my base. So that is something that you must be very careful because that's one place that we tend to mess up a lot with.
The very interesting point is when I got diagnosed earlier, the therapist, the doctor who was talking to me, told me something which I had until then never thought about it, which was that I think this is a beautiful Calvin and Hobbes quote, which says, "I want to wait for the last minute because my greatest creative fuel is blind panic." And it was very interesting to me to look at it because I always thought that, oh shit, man, I just do it at the last minute because of that blind panic and things like that. Until he told me a certain paradigm, a certain thing which changed the way I look at it, which was that you did it once, you did it twice. Now, because you're able to do it, your brain thinks that's the only way to do it. And therefore, you can start, you can do anything you want, all however you want it, but your brain will only start working 15 minutes before because it needs that extra level of craze
Dopamine.
and caffeine and all of those things before you can do it. And then you'll feel, yes, I have achieved it. And the problem with doing that is it leads to burnout and very quickly, especially if you're working in like high intensity fields wherein you have to deliver like 20 scripts in 2 days. That level of pushing your brain for the last 15 minutes and that speed is really adding a lot more miles to the mind and the body as well. And that's what leads to over excessive fatigue.
Interesting thing that you've said in terms of what people's notions are and how they impact our lives, right? One, people already seeing some piece of it but did not know how to say that to you. Then there is the other piece where you do recognize there are some challenges, but your understanding is discipline would be solving it. Both of them notions of how mental health or neurodivergence or ADHD, etc. There's nothing real here, but these are just people imagining certain things or understanding it or thinking this is the right way. And there is reality in both. One, had they actually come up and said to you, there seems to be, you really need a diagnosis, what would your reaction have been, given that you've also grown up seeing a family that said that you are lacking discipline, you are just not structured, or probably if we give you that structure, everything will be all right? I'm guessing these are some of the common statements. How would you actually have responded to that?
First, I'm married to a therapist. If someone had actually come back and told me that this is the scenario and whatnot, I would like to believe that rationally I would probably sit back down and think about it and then approach her and find out all of the sources. I will be also very honest and say that my initial reaction would have been, you're talking out of your ass. It's not something that possibly you're willing to hear. Also, because of the misconceptions that you think about it. If someone were to come up to me and say, listen, bud, you have ADHD, I'd be like, nah, I'm very structured. I do all of my things on time. I have never missed a deadline yet. It's not like I'm sitting around and going, okay, now today I will write script. Ooh, shiny. That's not me at all. Until you realize that those are just media cliche depictions of things. Now you add that to the ASD that is also there, and like now the new AUDHD thing, which is, by the way, what I have been diagnosed with, that and OCPD. The very real parts of living with it are almost imperceptible, and it's absolutely not like what they tell you on television. So, having grown up with managers who thought a lot like your parents did, and like with all of those disciplinarian things and those notions on mental health being more and more reinforced, what also happens is that there's a lot of other people who grew up the same way believing that this is wrong. So for us geriatric millennials, there is a very real problem that exists in the sense that a lot of our peers are possibly our biggest enemies. We're let down by our own generation in terms of thinking about how the mental health conversations can go and these kinds of things and whatnot. Consequently, a lot of that programming is also in your head in the sense that if someone tells you, oh, listen, you may have ASD and you may have ADHD and things like that, you're instantly very afraid because in your head, or rather in our time, it was something that held you back. You had to hide taking medications and stuff like that. Now I see people being open, like, yeah, bro, what do you take? Oh, what do you take? Oh, that one. What MG are you taking? And I'm just like, how is this possible? How are you all so free about talking about these things?
And you were like,
Uh,
oh, what did I do that you caught onto it? That I thought I was masking or hiding. How did you figure this about me? Is that what ran into your head?
A little bit. It's also, I didn't know I was masking, right? I just thought that there was nothing wrong, or rather, I thought there was something wrong. What we're always told is that depression and anxiety are things, are conditions. Sometimes they are also symptoms, which we rarely tend to look at. So turns out that was the thing. My depression and my anxiety were not the actual conditions I had, they were more symptoms of other things. I used to get anxious because I was unable to look at certain tasks outside of the massive mountain that they were. They say step by step or begin the work gets done and things like that. That doesn't work for us, right? It doesn't work for a lot of people with ADHD because a lot of us approach an all or nothing approach. We look at it and say, oh my God, there's the summit. I have to get there. It's so far away. Or you'll just go, just yeah, it's just a summit. I'll get there in no time and things like that. And invariably, somewhere, some panic starts setting in, and that thing manifests itself as anxiety. The next time you have to do something like that. For example, if I was writing a script and I finished the first one in 15 minutes, and I know that there are 20 more that I need to write. On the one part of it, I'm going, it's fine. I can finish it if I just do 15 minute stretches, then by 30 hours, I'm done. But then there'll be someone who's coming around there and going, bro, is it done? Is it done? Is it done? I have to talk to the client. I have to talk to the client. That panic then feeds into my panic, which then gives me anxiety the next time I get to have to do anything with this kind of a thing. Then there's the worry about what people are going to say, how you're going to react to it and things. Because I was very non-confrontational as a person. Because as I have now realized, I did not have the mental RAM, so to speak, to process complete levels of conflict resolution and whatnot. I just have the entire fight in my own head and just say, listen, this is too exhausting to do it in real life. So I'm not going to do this. But then that led to an anxious response because I would go out of my way to avoid any form of confrontation. And that sometimes in life it's important. If you're debating with someone and they're giving you ridiculous feedback, as opposed to saying, yes, sir, we'll get it done, no problem, we'll do this and things like that. You're just adding on to your own scenario later. The result of all of this anxiety and everything was that suddenly I fell into this great huge funk where I was like, I don't know, man, I don't think I'm doing anything right and stuff like that. And is it worth it? So that's when I first started looking at what the possible things out there. And there was dysthymia, which is now I think it's called executive dysfunction, that came out as not a popular term, so to speak, but something that had newly been added into the DSM. That was something that just got me thinking. Then now, since the diagnosis and the medication and stuff like that, when I realized that my levels of anxiety have gone down, my confidence and how I approach scenarios and things like that has come up. And it's very important, especially because if you're going into business for yourself, you need to be able to stand your ground on either deliverables or payments and those kinds of things, which I would have to put a hand on heart and say that my unmedicated self would have never been able to do it. This is very accurately how the stress manifested itself as a different kind of a thing, as an anxiety or as a depression, as opposed to it being more of a symptom of something far more unregulated and chaotic.
What you're trying to tell me is that there are these non-preferred tasks, clearly, right? Which is having to discuss, for example, that this work costs this money or this time, or this is the way that I need to do it so that it comes out right. So it's not actually the task that's the problem, it's getting others to align with your way of working. That seemed very anxiety creating for you. Am I getting that piece correctly?
Yes and no, mainly because I did not know what was my way of working. I tried to, again, mimic or mask through imitating the highest performers, how they worked and try to do all of their things. So it wasn't really a scenario of people getting to know it from my perspective or get them to start working or understand the way I'm working and make that alignment. It was more me being derailed from trying to follow the way that a high performer was working, which was causing that anxiety. Because then I'd automatically anticipate that while it never happened, I would anticipate the why can't you follow this process? Why can't you do it like this? See, this is working so well. Well done, blah, 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 blah. Everyone take notes and things like that. And believe me, I really tried. I think I have 20 odd different, this is how you get to the top of the management food chain hacks, which I have very unsuccessfully tried to follow. And that is where the entire problem came out because I was like, this ain't working for me. Why is it not working for me? What is wrong with me? Why am I so bad? Which then led to a very low feeling and things like that. Now, it's helpful to have a diagnosis because then at least I know what is the kind of support to look for, what is the kind of right things to Google for and whatnot. Before you're just Googling, I'm feeling anxious, what to do? First thing on the internet, calm down. Yep, thanks. That's all I need. Cheers. But now, if you have a proper diagnosis, you can actually enter the right amount of symptoms. You can enter exactly what's happening. You have that understanding. And that automatically extends the amount of reading that you can do, the amount of literature that exists out there. And I find that's very helpful because I do like to do my own reading and my own research as opposed to having someone tell me, okay, see, this is what is happening to you. This is why you should be doing it. When I did get diagnosed, the doctor first off sent me about a Google Drive's worth of things about what this diagnosis means and what it interprets and what are the different various support systems and things like that. What are the terms I should be Googling? What are some of the writers that I should be looking up at? And some extracts of some scholarly papers and things like that. That really helped because otherwise, without any of that, it was just two words that were randomly thrown at me. And my fear at that time was that these two words are going to be the words that kind of mm, define me moving forward. Everyone's going to go, oh, bro, that's Vishnu, man. He's like AuDHD. And then gradually, the term neurodivergent came to start feeling, yeah, cool. I am not neurotypical, clearly, because I am really realizing that I don't work the same way others work, but it's not a failing entirely. It's just a different way. And there does exist place for people like me in the world. So that's been the more relief.
Again, very curious thing that you have talked about, this need for high achievement, which is very common. That's where the masking come from. That's where the looking at the 20 different ways to hit the pinnacle, whether or not this way works for me or not, that's where everyone's supposed to be. And that's how these guys are doing it. And hence, I need to be doing one of this so that I can hit that spot. This need for high achievement. And hence, looking at your neurodivergence as either holding you back or being a derailer. I constantly see with everybody that we've been speaking with or I have seen as neurodivergent, this need for high achievement and then trying these different methods rather than looking inward and saying today. So today, post your diagnosis, that's what you're telling us, how you're looking at how you're de-stressing yourself, what is causing you anxiety, what is bothering you so much, and what are the other ways that you work well so that it's not causing you so much stress, rather you do a certain way successfully yet yours. Why is it so important for us to not be comfortable with ourselves but to constantly run behind the person who's doing it really well? Why this need for external validation, probably to say that yes, I am the best here and there is no other way of being?
Honestly, I think that's just purely the way that most of us have been brought up. If you came home with a 99 percentile report card, the question was always, why is it not 100%? Did someone get 100%? And when the answer to that is yes, then why aren't you getting it? Maybe you should be working a little harder. Everything that you are told in life. I'm glad that narrative is changing, and I'm glad that there's an entire generation of people who are working extra hard to make sure that the mistakes of the previous generations do not go ahead. But again, like I said, us geriatric millennials really are our own worst enemies because we fed into this system of this is what achievement looks like. And unfortunately, we also came through from a time where technology was also advancing enough to be able to make an external validation no longer just mohalle mein log kya kahenge kind of thing, but what is the internet going to be saying about you? And more people started having a lot of people on the internet say successful things. And when you look at your peers getting that level of validation, maybe at some level, given that you've been told that's the only way to get ahead and that's the only way that you're going to be happy, it becomes a lot more stressful. And that's why the chase.
And how did it work out to have a therapist as a partner who's looking at you? How did that relationship move on? Was there a mirror to you, or how did that go?
I've got to give her credit. Until such time that I was ready to talk about it, we never spoke about it. She just pretty much she can't be my therapist. And even if she were to notice some things and stuff like that, she used to probably keep it within, because it's never a good idea to apparently let people know that they may be neurodivergent until such time that they're ready to hear about it. But what used to definitely happen was sometimes if it got a little too much and things like that, she gently brought me into the right way of, this is maybe something that you should read up on or take a look at this. And that I found out about executive dysfunction and things like that through her as well. So there were gentle prods and nods into the direction of starting to read up a little more and do all of these and whatnot, to the point that when I finally said, okay, you know what, I think I am going to go and get this diagnosis done, I was ready. So the groundwork, I realize now it was groundwork, but at that time I was just like, okay, what fun reading is this that you're giving me on a Sunday, madam? I want to sleep. And then I just blow out 3 hours reading about something. So, yeah, the groundwork was laid without my even realizing it.
And once you did have that label, was it as scary as you had imagined it for the people around you? The way that they would say, oh, Vishnu, the AuDHD person coming. Was it that, or was it just, Vishnu?
No, it was just like, I knew it. I always knew it. The ease at which it is people have accepted it is also annoying me. I know this is a contradiction, but it is very annoying as
Yeah.
well. Mainly because it just seems like all this time they knew something I didn't know, and I finally caught up. At least that's how I initially thought about it. I thought, okay, you know what? You people are just y'all had this big ass inside joke and like this huge ass conversation and this huge secret that y'all were holding on to about me. And now it's finally, oh, look who's finally come to the party. Yay, you made it later than we thought you would, but you made it. And then after that, it's just been about people have been a lot more understanding than I thought that they would be, because I fully anticipated that as in when I started confronting these things and confronting the behaviors and things like that, certain amounts of my life would change. Certain ways that I communicate with people would change. Certain ways that I do things would change. And for someone who's known me for a really long time to do things in a certain way, this might suddenly either come across as a massive behavioral change or whatnot. Till date, no one seems to have fought it. I'm hoping that remains the case, but I also hope that I don't eventually end up being a completely different version of who I was before, because then that will lead me to another massive identity crisis, because then it'll just be like, who was I for 40 years that I was masking? And if this is the real me, then good God, will people still like this? And that's never going to go. I don't know if this is for everyone, but certainly for me, that feeling will never go away. But I say it's time that I possibly, if that is how it has to be, then that is how it has to be. We'll see what the people say afterwards. But first things first, I need to protect this.
So, some of the coping strategies that you used to work with, like one you've already mentioned, the last minute deadline, rush of the dopamine to get and deliver a certain standard of work that you used to deliver. What else have these coping strategies been that you recognize were really damaging for yourself?
Insomnia, complete lack of sleep, like just pulling off all-nighters, working for 18, 19 hours at a stretch to get stuff done, just chasing that hit, so to speak. A lot of a lot of cigarettes smoked, a lot of drinks consumed in order to give the creative spark. Everything external was done. The reason why I say that I recognize the toll it started having on my body was where I could not get any form of normal rest. I had no concept of what rest was at all, because if I wasn't working, then I was sleeping. And that sleep was also just, it was brain and battery low shutdown mode. It wasn't even like a restful rejuvenation kind of a thing. Shut down, put charger on, instantly plug back up and work. So I had a lot of those kinds of things. I also tried following my more organized colleagues' ways of how they had everything broken down into tasks. This is a purple, this is a green, this is a blue, according to their levels of productivity and things like that, which worked beautifully for a day or so. And then I realized that I was ignoring all of the smaller ones and doing the big ones. When everyone kept saying, go do the smaller ones, you will get the satisfaction of having ticked something off your to do list. And I was like, that is how I should probably be feeling, but I'm not feeling that way. I tried every form of, okay, let me write down everything that's in my head and then I will just pick the key parts of that and put it there. Then I moved from there to transcribing. And then once AI started, I just used the mic and like I would just say whatever it was. And then AI would transcribe. And then I would look at that and say, now from here, I will pick out these insights and things like that. I was doing so much. I was doing so many things to try and get one behavioral result. And none of those things seemed to be working. The stress that ended up coming on to me really started hitting me when I realized about the fact that I couldn't rest. I wasn't able to rest. It was not a reset. It was not even a recharge. It was just this. And it wasn't an everyday thing also. It was when we were going out on holidays, when we were going out on things. That really hit me. And the second thing that really hit me was when I realized just how terrified I had become of every Monday morning. You know, that dread that they talk about, which you make memes about on Sunday afternoon, you start feeling the dread and whatnot. But I would wake up on Sunday nights in a cold sweat and like really be terrified of Monday mornings because I knew at that time, I thought that it was, I'm scared of getting shouted at because I didn't do some work right. Invariably, Monday mornings are when you have the weekly planning meetings. Later on, I've come to realize that I wasn't so much scared of the shouting I was going to get. I was just scared of doing the whole thing that had drained me to the core in the last week again. And I don't particularly consider myself an exceptionally brave person or whatnot, but I got tired of living in that fear. So that's also another major thing that I recognized was where the mask was slipping. And working with that fear, right? When you're working with that, automatically your Monday mornings become so stressful. And your hands start shaking. You see the physiological effects of it. Invariably, you'll end up with a headache, or it's one of those stress, those tension headaches, right? Invariably, you'll end up with one of those. Your body hurts a lot more. If you're traveling to go to work and you're traveling through traffic and everything, and there is going to be something that's going to piss you off, which means that you're going to come into work already in a bad mood, and your entire day is gone. As if you're working in a creative line, you can't have that approach in however it is. And that started happening so much, which then led to further other problems of figuring out how to enhance the mood and those kinds of things, which then led to things like weight gain and further loss of energy and all of that. So that's when I said, okay, boss, this is really not working because it's putting way too many miles on the body. What really sold it for me was, and I compared a picture of mine from 3 years ago to now, and I look like I've aged 10 in that gap because of everything I have taken up to be able to cope or just survive. And the mental stress, the bad habits, the questionable rest and reset timings, the complete lack of appetite or excess of appetite and all of that. When I saw the before and after image of it, and I was like, Jesus, this is not good. So that's when I realized something needs to be done.
That's amazing. And it's listening to how your life functions and through somebody else. But here, there's also the good part and there's the bad part, right? For you, it's very clearly when you, for most people, if you're looking at drugs or external things, external validation or dopamine methods to just function, while you might actually take up something really good on the other side, right? Here, it's you can call yourself out if you're smoking 25 cigarettes, it's not great a day, right? But at the same time, if you take up 20 other responsibilities that are great for the community, because you're still looking for the same dopamine rush. The outcome is the same, but you're doing great things or bad things, but you're still running on those external pieces. You're running on fumes, right? You don't have the rest, you don't have the energy. You've taken 25,000 things on your head because that's the only way you feel you matter or you mean, or you're contributing in a way that you think is what contribution should mean or what a human life should do. And then you try and put all these maps and structures, the colors, the papers, the all these sticky notes, all of that to make sense of it, and it still doesn't. And the rest piece of ADHD, the lack of rest. Like I even see my son and both of us ADHDers, right? And you know that when we sleep, we're out. And when we wake up, it's like battery on. When you said that, it's just up and moving on. While you see your partner and your other children, they need the time where they're waking up to slowly getting into that pace of the day has come up, and they see that you see that pace. But no, but for you, you're like batteries put in, recharge on, enter. That piece, where is that energy, or how much is too much? There's no way on earth. How did that click for you? Was it medication that said, okay, let me take a pause, or was it therapy? How does one get to that point where they're saying that, okay, yes, I've gone to you, I've got this label, but now something needs to change, and hence I do some things differently? What was that? How did that flip occur?
When I decided to take a break from work, honestly, I said I had a massive blow up with some folks at work, and then my bosses sat me down and said, buddy, maybe you need to think about certain things, because if you're going to go into senior management, then we can't have you blowing up like this. Take a break, take a pause. It was my immediate fear reaction was that they're putting me on garden leave. They don't want me here anymore. They're going to do this and that and all of those things. But then 3 days of that panic later, one of my founders reached up to me and said, listen, I know what you're going through. This happened to me before as well. Would you like to meet my psychiatrist? Because I've met a lot of counselors, I've met a lot of therapists, and it's not the easiest thing to adjust to someone. And again, when people give you tasks and things like that, it's not, for example, one of my tasks when I used to go to regular therapy was journal. Make sure that you journal every day. You must write this one. I forgot to do it for 2 days, and I spent the next 3 days worrying about the fact that I hadn't done it for 2 days, and then suddenly realized I haven't done it for 5 days, which then meant I bunked the next three sessions because I hadn't finished my homework from the first one.
My
Then suddenly,
homework's never done. My homework's just not done. Every single.
which then left me suddenly with like about 15 to 20 days of unwritten journal and panic about that, which then led me to the very ingenious hack of writing. So, what was your feeling today? Day one, panic. Day two, panic. Day three, panic. Day four, and just went that for 20 days, and then finally went back and said, here, this is what your task has made me do. Panic. This lady, she asked me if I wanted to go meet her psychiatrist. I said, you know what? It's why not? Might as well, right? It's like I said, the groundwork has already been laid in. Then I went, met. I finally got a proper test done, as opposed to just these random ones that exist on the internet wherein you can program it the way that you want it to, and it'll give you the results that you wanted to get. So here she actually sat me down, explained what each question means, what the reactions are, and then guided me through the whole process. And then once she did all that and explained to me what the results meant, and then also spoke about look at the damage that you're doing to yourself on this level and things like that, is when I realized that, okay, I think it's important. Then they said, you have two options. We can either continue this and try and do this with therapy, or why don't we get you started with medications, because it's the stigma is no longer there. And more importantly, it's also helpful. It's if you take multivitamins every day, this is also something just for that. So I was already taking B12, and I was doing the multivitamins. So this is just one more pill to start taking. I lost my worry, I lost my panic about that, and then said, cool, you know what, let's do it. I don't know if I was expecting magical transformation or magical results, but I have gradually started noticing changes within myself in how I approach things. I was never calm. Now I am a lot more calm. Like especially if you're going to be one of those strategy gurus or something like that, you have to exude calm and confidence. And oh, I kid you not, a huge part of my work is field work, which means I go and talk to a lot of people. Some people can be insanely negative. Some people can be very confrontational. Some people can be outright dismissive. You deal with them in a very calm, collected, like you throw whatever you want with me. I will still continue to ask my questions and plod on without reacting emotionally to their emotions is a change I have noticed that I'm able to do. As my stoner friends put it, it's almost you've reached stoner levels of Zen. It's like there's nothing that's going to bug me. You can say what you want, I'm going to keep at it. And that's been an interesting change. No one's ever known me as this calm person. And it is also my mother, for example, is a very straight up, rational, logical person kind of a thing. But given everything that's happening with dad as well, she's also a little bit on frayed nerves. So this time around, I finally had the mental load to be able to do a lot more as opposed to being just there if she needed me. Like I was able to divide my time, take full day shifts at the hospital so that she could go home and rest and then come back and take mental cognitive load bearing decisions without just the shallow instant dopamine ones. And I think that's the biggest change I've seen. Relationships will always still continue to be a little bit of a mystery to me. I must be very honest. But it's given me some amount of clarity also to articulate what I need. For example, I've always had colleagues. I've rarely had friends. I used to have friends when I was in college and when I was in school and whatnot. But I look around at people who have such active friends, healthy friends groups, and I was never able to actually articulate what I was feeling. Was it jealousy? Was it sadness? Was it a complete lack of this? Until recently, when I just articulated it, saying, I want to have more friends beyond just going out and getting a drink with them or like doing something and whatnot. I want a community. I want some amount of, for lack of a better word, fellowship. I was saying this at the Christmas party to a bunch of guy friends of mine, saying, you know what we should do? We should just every Friday we should just start playing poker, and something that we all three share in common, and we can all just do it. One day your house, one day your house, one day my house. That way it becomes a routine, ritual kind of a thing also. And it's also when you're playing poker, think about us guys. We need some amount of intoxication around to do something. Either it's the heady hit of winning money or losing money, but that's when proper convos happen. I've started articulating those things a little more. Right? What I need for help, if I need help, if someone needs help from me, then articulating exactly how they have to ask for it so that I can be able to effectively do it. All of those things.
Many people find medication, uh,
Hmm.
the idea of it very scary, or the fact that, especially if you're in the creative fields, it's going to tone me down, and hence I will not have the kind of work that I was able to do earlier. Especially in advertising, I will not be my creative self, is a clear fear. What do you have to say about that?
I was worried. I honestly was because, again, it comes through from all of the bad parts of the internet that you invariably end up with. You search for a stress headache and everybody tells you that's it, you got a brain tumor. I remained worried until such time that I was told the names of multiple of these drugs that are prescribed for the multiple levels of medication that are prescribed for this particular conditions and what each one of them actually does. I had to do that level of reading before I was finally convinced. Because, yeah, you're absolutely right. You do worry about your senses getting dulled, about your brains taking a hit, and the blind panic that fueled us at the very end suddenly going away then makes you wonder, is that it? What if I don't have that panic anymore? How am I going to work? So, yeah, I've definitely been worried about that. It is also possibly what may have delayed going to actually seek help as well. And even the first time around when they did suggest medication, I was like, then they're like, okay, here, take this, read. This is what it does. And I was like, okay, fine, cool, let's do it. Now, of course, now that I'm on it, I have realized that none of what I was worried about happened. If anything else, I don't want to say I'm sharper, but I'm not duller, which just makes me feel I was always very sharp.
Two things there. One, would you go back to, or would you recommend young adults to get on with a label and getting on medication earlier? Do you think that would really help you to not get into a certain way of functioning, rather get the support earlier? Two, when you talk about your neurodivergent self helping you or having certain patterns of functioning, right? There are certain strengths that only Vishnu has. Do you feel that it's the neurodivergent self or the fact that you have ADHD that allows you certain aspects and that actually builds your strength? And does that medication impact it in such a way that my neurodivergence, I'm not that shiny anymore? I know you've answered a bit of it, but are they connected?
That's a very interesting question. I have always prided myself on being able to identify patterns, right? That's a big reason of why I wanted to go into strategy, because I've always been able to figure out patterns and insights and things like that a lot quicker than a lot of others did. The problem was that while I was able to figure these things out and do it, it was more of a scenario of, yeah, I can do it when I want to. The when I want to was a problem. So I've always been a voracious reader, and still till date, Wikipedia remains my favorite site because it's perfect for the ADHD brain. Jump from here to here. Me and my friend used to, in fact, do this game where we used to, during COVID, we used to get on a call and take 7 clicks and figure out where is it that we would end up from one place. We'd figure out, we'd have a conversation, we'd start talking about it until we reach the next click, and then we'd see how that was connected and build that. I was not, I don't think I've ever been thinking that was a part of my neurodivergent self or that was because of my ADHD or whatnot. Because to me, that's always just been Vishnu. I've been curious, I've been passionate, I love research, all of those things. So I was never worried that was going to be taken away from me. What I did worry was that, for example, is a very bad scene, but in the movie A Beautiful Mind, when he stops taking his meds, he suddenly starts seeing those coded messages in the newspapers again, which he hadn't been seeing for a really long time. I worried if that would happen to me. Like whatever I was looking at in terms of the patterns, whether that would go away. I never worried that if that went away, then what did it leave me? There's some level of confidence I have that I would have found something else. But then now I've realized that is a symptom of sorts. So it's never going to go away. If anything else, it's going to be enhanced a lot better, wherein I'm suddenly not running 18 tabs in one go, but I'm running one tab. I'm able to see that from start to finish and then jump to tab two. So if anything else, it's possibly made it smoother. But I've always been as sharp, and I still believe that.
What meds are you on? I'm still running 15 tabs.
I am still running 15 tabs as well. This is just the outward facing for the external validation. Properly, people take medication. Nothing's going to happen. Life will change. Okay. No, I'm joking. The 15 tabs still do exist, but I no longer find myself like tab number one, read 25%, jump to tab number two, then
I
jump to tab 18 and things like that.
No, I get
That-
exactly what you're talking, Vishnu, because I kept telling everybody that when I said, and I think this is a repeat now, I keep saying that every time I'm speaking, I think it's like a repeater on record mode, where I say that the moment I started on medication, it's just that the cloud lifted off to some
Hmm.
extent, right? I could see, I was still upset about all the things that I need to be upset about. That if there is violence somewhere, if there is certain issues, the things that I get used to get bothered about, but I could give you a rational response rather than be taken over by that emotional cloud and then not articulate what is it that was making me upset. I was just able to articulate it so much better, and I would also see certain things, those patterns, in such a way that I could see how it would impact me rather than or what a certain outcome would do faster than rather than let the outcome happen and then deal with it. That
Mm.
emotional clarity, I think it's the first time that I'm having that 18 tabs piece that you're talking about. But still, yes, let me finish this because this is a task that needs to be done. And bringing the focus to the right aspects has happened because of medication. So, yes, I hear you completely.
And with that brings me to the earlier part of your question. Do you think people should get diagnosed earlier? I'm no one to say anything. If anything, my experience has taught me of how others had this knowledge about me, but waited until it was time for me to do it. I, in retrospect, think that they were right. You can't just randomly drop a neurodivergent label on someone and say, hey, you're neurodivergent, go get tested. That just sounds like a very odd thing to be telling people, and you never know how people are going to be receptive. What I do think should happen is there needs to be a lot more of this in popular parlance, not just coming through as through other people who are neurodivergent and things like that. You need to be able to have safe spaces or third spaces where you can discuss this. There's a very laudable effort that happens in Bombay on this Instagram page called Andheri West Shit Posting, wherein they have a neurodivergent support group where they have people who are neurodivergent or suspect that they might be neurodivergent. They all meet, they get together once or twice a month. Sometime in one of those sessions, it's just discussion. The other session, they actually have someone from the mental health field coming in and talking about it and discussing what the new things are. And that group is growing and growing. So there is possibly a need for a lot more of such initiatives, because then if you feel that something's off, you need a place. And the quicker you're able to find that community, because one of the things that I've realized is that without a community, the mental health struggle is a very lonely one. It works very hard to keep you lonely. And that is possibly the only thing that I can say should start when you're younger, in the sense of that level of a support group. Because otherwise, you're going to be fighting this all alone and all by yourself. And more importantly, you're voluntarily going to be putting yourself alone because you think no one else is getting this. When the truth is, I think what 75% of the world right now is neurodivergent. The neurotypicals are probably a lot more in the minority. So it's really either a huge delusion of grandeur on our part, thinking that no one will get us, or it's just our brain saying, shh, don't be a burden on someone else. Let me just be a burden on you. Mm. I think that is the only way that more and more people will start understanding that there is something that's different. Different does not mean wrong, and I am not alone. That's the only thing I would want to change. I do not recommend that more and more people start getting tested early on, because there are enough and more quacks out there who will take full advantage of impressionable people and run that badly. But more supportive third spaces and community building is really going to be the one that helps. There's this thing outside of Hazmat that really annoys me. Are you feeling depressed? Here, come to the mental health clinic. What does that even mean? That is not the right way to look at anything, because then you're just likening one big umbrella term and saying, come, we will cure it. That's not how it works, right? We need a situation where like people are able to understand what neurodivergent means without it sounding like you're a part of the X-Men. And from that alone is the only thing that I would say, that because otherwise recommending someone gets tested from an early age. Today, I'm willing to bet someone will find a way to either take like Ritalin or something and make that into a competitive advantage, like how they do it in colleges these days. They call it the exam drugs, right? Where it just increases your attention span and whatnot. There's soon enough that will become the new pride of place, and far from it being the curative thing or the controlled thing that it was, it'll suddenly become again another race towards academic achievement. Just like how
You
Ozempic
mentioned,
is these days.
you mentioned the word burden, and I'm stuck on that. Let me be a burden. Explain that piece.
This is how my mind used to work. Don't be a burden on other people. Bro, you're being a burden on me. That's fine. You deserve to be burdened. But why do you want someone else to know what you're going through and stuff like that? Do they need to know? No. Do they have their own problems? Probably. Then why do you want to tell them yours? That's what I meant.
That's also a very neurodivergent trait, right?
So I've learned.
Yeah, where either in your head you are amazing. It's like the 15-minute problem, right? I can solve it. 15 into whatever in 30 hours, it will be done. At the same time, you also have this piece where you're like never good enough. That conversation that my problems are my problems, I'm only trouble for others, etc. So, as parents of, and I'm looking at you having that conversation at some point with your folks or having had gone for some kind of assessment with them, and today having had that journey, how has that transitioned for that relationship with your parents? You're now also caring for them. How does that piece of I can ask for help, I can give you help, I'm no longer a burden, you are not a burden to me, how has that relationship translated?
I honestly don't think my folks and I ever had possibly what would be called loving relationship. Supportive, sure. They were 100% supportive. Told my mom and dad, both IIT graduates, that I wanted to go and study humanities, and they were like, "You thought about it?" I was like, "I've thought about it." "You sure about it?" "I'm sure about it." "Okay, cool. Let's go figure that out then." And that's a pretty massive thing for them to be 100% behind. And then when it came to working in advertising, working all of those things, looking at the hours I was putting in, they've always been there to help out in certain ways. But like, I don't think I could go and talk to them about my problems at work or those kinds of things. But then it's hardly fair to lay that on their doorstep, because I never really talked to anyone about the problems I was going through. It's probably maybe like a couple of days like getting drunk and I was going like, fuck, bro, this is what is happening. And maybe just some amount of bitching about people and things like that. But actually actively talking about that, I've never done that. So the relationship has remained the same. It's just possibly now a little easier for me to do it, because the last 5 years have not been easy. I will be perfectly frank. It's been hard to watch the man I knew as my father decline and keep forgetting me and things like that. And it was a lot of load to bear, which I couldn't. Now I can. And so it's not so much a transition in them, it's more a transition in me. And I also do not particularly expect them to recognize that. And I've realized that I'm okay with it. I don't know if that answers your question, but honestly, the relationship has not changed. It's still the same. It remains very transactional, very I'm proud of you, very validation seeking kind of a thing. But that's about it.
Interesting. Which also talks about a lot of relationships that I have seen around in terms of parents and children. If you were to be a parent, I'm sorry, I don't know if you are.
I'm not. I
Okay.
have a dog who people suspect has ADHD, but I don't know.
Now we're labeling animals too.
Why not? Might as well. See, this is why I don't think people should get tested early on, because some invariably something will happen.
But yeah, like I say, my dog has anxiety, like constantly. And I can't blame the dog. It's me. It's my transference to the poor child. I understand that it's been a long conversation. And are there few things that you have recognized have really helped you in your journey? One, I do understand seeking a community, finding a community, and finding the friends to be able to have difficult conversations with. Not just, bro, I'm struggling with this bad boss, but these pieces of me finding it difficult to sync with, or whichever the challenging conversations that you may have. To find that community is one. To seek help is the second that I have learned from you. Three, to acknowledge that and that rest is important and you need it and you need to take that wherever required. What else do you think are certain pieces that could really help us with?
Don't look for immediate wins. And I think that's a very important thing to do, because when you first start on the journey towards either like with the diagnosis and then building up, well, okay, look, it's been what, 2 months for me after being officially diagnosed and taking the medications and things like that. When I say don't look for immediate wins, I mean that don't expect that you'll take the tablet and or the capsule and then suddenly you are energized and you are able to do everything, and like that fog lifts and things like that. The fog to me has not fully lifted yet. It is lifted enough that I know what exists beneath it. But if we're to talk about like proper AQI qualities, we're still in the hazardous levels. The 18 tabs thing still exists. It's just now I'm able to go, even if I still don't finish tab one, I jump from tab one to tab two to tab three, at least in a linear fashion. I don't jump from tab one to tab 18 to then come back here and jumble everything in place and things like that. Recognizing what is the change and recognizing that change is going to be gradual, I think is very important, because when you get diagnosed, if you're already saying, okay, this is going to help me and this is going to help me ASAP, and I'm suddenly now going to be all conquering, that's never going to happen. And it possibly might have the reverse effect. When it's not happening, you're worried that it's not happening, and then you're going to stop taking it because, like, okay, what's the point? Secondly, it is very hard to stop talking about it after you get that diagnosis, because it's suddenly like you become, hey, I'm neurodivergent. Hey, hi, I'm Vishnu, I'm neurodivergent. Calm down. I know that's a little bit of a stupid phrase, but that's an anxiety response. Okay. You're trying to tell as many people as you can about it to see how they're going to respond to you. So that invariably you're doing your own focus group in your head. If I speak to 50 people and I tell them I'm neurodivergent, 25 of them reacted positively, 20 of them reacted negatively, 5 people were neutral. Note to self, this behavior tells me that blah, blah, blah. Again, it's another neurodivergent protective anxiety response. You don't need to go down that path, because honestly speaking, at least in the communities we are in, it's a lot more understood. I won't say understanding, but it's a lot more understood or a lot more comprehended enough to be able to at least start a conversation or be of the kind that's okay, good. Anyway, coming back to this. And the third thing, if you suspect that you might be, first things first, start looking. Don't Google for things, because if you Google without knowing what it is, then it's going to be a problem. Start looking for communities or support groups around. There are plenty of them that exist. Start maybe interacting with other neurodivergent people, because even if they don't tell you things, there will be always a cue that exists either through the memes they share or like the hints they drop or the dark jokes that they make and things. You will be able to find someone who's neurodivergent, and then you can have a conversation with them. 90% of the neurodivergent folks I've met realized that they were neurodivergent after meeting another person and not thinking that, oh, wow, there's a lot that I have in common with this person, but more realizing how their reactions to things are ours. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The research part will definitely scratch the itch. So do as much reading as you can, and do as much relevant reading as you can.
We also have the tendency to self analyze, right? I seem to have this, right? And suddenly it can go to this piece of, I am ADHD because that's a very dangerous piece, I feel, to be doing that because I have a certain symptom or two, is to say that you have this, and also using the terminology very loosely because I'm sad about something, oh, I'm so depressed. To understand that these words have value and have weight and have challenges. And it almost seems, if you look at the social media today, that it's very cool to be neurodivergent. And as you said, what is actually shown and the struggles of it can be very dark and very lonely and very painful. How do you explain that to somebody, who's very young and who's okay? Being neurodivergent is this shiny, sparkly thing that you have ADHD, so you're creative, you can do these things. But there's also the ability to get addicted very easily to drugs. You're constantly thrill seeking, you're constantly unable to finish certain work, your relationships are questionable because you never put in the work. And you need quick wins. You really cannot sustain the energy to go on and on about certain things. And you might start a project and never finish it because the other interesting thing has come up. And this involves a lot of boring, dirty work. So I know I've gone to a spiel of my own, but how does it not look as shiny, but at the same time, how do we understand it as important to recognize?
How do you convince a young person that there is a dark part to this whole thing? Short answer, you can't, because they won't listen to you. Let's be frank. You and I have both taught kids, and when we teach them and we tell them, listen, kids, this is what the real world's like, they're just gonna go, oh, okay, cool, yeah, sure, bro. It may have been that way for you, but it's not gonna be that way for me. Okay.
Not how they
You can't
always
tell them.
talk. Come on. So judgy there, Vishnu.
I was being cliched. Let's use the right
Okay.
word, please. No, realistically, you can't because no one can actually prepare you for what it is until you actually go through it. And what you can do is start telling people that, hey, I know that you think that you have ADHD and that's helping your creativity and stuff like that. But are you also feeling XYZ thing? Hint towards the dark side and get them to start being a little more aware of it without actually calling it the dark side. Because if you say, listen, I know you think this, but this is what could possibly happen, they'll be like, yeah, not for you, not for me. I'm different. We all have that, right? We all believe that we can beat it. And things are not going to be the same for me that it was for someone else. I took up a challenge saying I'll finish writing a book in 3 weeks. I finished one chapter, which is a huge win.
It's a huge
It's a huge
win.
win.
Yes.
But like, you always believe that I can, what someone else has said, I will do this in 2 days. I was recently faced with a similar situation where someone said, I think I have ADHD. I said, uh-huh. Why do you think that? So I just keep jumping from here to here and things like that. And I'm like, okay. But it's really helping me in my writing because like I have so many different things and I have so many different plots in my head and then I can connect that and whatnot. And I find that so cool. That's great. How are you sleeping? Sleep? I'm not sleeping. I was like, just one of those things you might want to be a little wary about is that you're getting so excited about everything that your brain's constantly working and keeping you functioning at all points in time. But better rest is important. Please rest le lo thoda sa. That's the only way that you can do it. You need to subtly ask the questions that you know are reflections of the dark side because you've been there and bring their attention to it gradually. Because if you advise, they will ignore. If they stumble upon it themselves, they will take it more seriously.
Got it. Anything else that you would like to say before we wrap up?
Actually, to come back to something that you pointed out, there's always going to be an assumption on two fronts. The older generation is always going to think this is something that holds you back, the neurodivergent tag. The younger generation is going to proudly want to flaunt it. And especially if you're lately diagnosed, you're going to find yourself stuck in the middle of both of those very conflicting worlds, where on one side you're encouraged to go and shout it from the rooftops, and on the other side you're told, yeah, okay, bro, keep it to yourself. Now, about that deliverable of mine. Every journey, as cliched as this sounds, is not different. Honestly, every journey is the same. What you've gone through, what I've gone through, most of us, the very fact that we can find parallels in all of our stories and hear that is proof that every journey is almost 99% the same. We may have different stops or like our sceneries might look different, but the tracks are all the same. And one advice to all the neurodivergent folk out there, the fact that your story is the same as someone else's story is not a bad thing. Stop treating it as the fact that just because someone else has a similar experience, oh God, now it makes this lame, which means that I must have a completely new, different experience now. That's how you jump from tab 1 to tab 90. That's about it. I don't think anything else can be said. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the conversation was very interesting because for me, it was like listening to another parallel about the challenges. And though I have heard many different perspectives, I think we are closer at age, we closer in terms of the work experience, the kind of things that we've done, that piece of making sense of one's life. Of course,
Hmm.
my journey started a little earlier than yours, and I've been on a medication much longer. So, yes, the piece that you really mentioned, where taking it slow and just understanding that it's not magic, right? It's not Harry Potter's wand doing any, then the cloud lifting, I might have added that piece, which feels it's a very slow lift, as you said, right? And also, there's a lot of inner work that needs to happen. That's the sad part about being neurodivergent, right? By the time you get to it, then there's so much work that you have to sit with, where you have to talk to yourself and say, oh, okay, so this is what's bothering you, and this is the dark side, or this is not the dark side. This is great for you, but this is not. I'm glad that you're on that journey. And I'm glad that you are on that journey when it's actually very difficult for you with ailing parents and having to navigate that. And you've been able to support them in the way that you have. That's something I think you should be super, super proud of.
Thank you. I do believe that there is, I don't know, maybe I'm being a little too judgy on this front, but I do believe that it's important as people who have been diagnosed and things like that to be able to help someone else. I don't mean it in the sense of being an ambassador or things like that, not even just something as basic as being an ally. But I think, and this is where I really actually admire what you do in the sense of how much of an advocate you are for neurodivergence in workplaces and also in the kind of content that we write and consume and things like that. One of the things, for example, that really struck me was how literally I used to take things until I realized that's a neurodivergent response, right? There's taglines to a lot of people like, oh wow, that's such an emotional depth over there. And like, ah, okay, cool. It says just do it. So do it. What's the emotional depth in that? No, bro, you don't understand it. It's removing the indecision. How? It's removing it. It's all about the spontaneity. It's all about not overthinking. Cool. What are you doing at the end of it? You're just doing it, no? Ah, so that's what it's saying. You shut up, just do it. It's important to be able to bring everyone into the conversation and have everyone else also be able to have that level of feeling and that level of conversation. I think it's the role of people like you and I who have been in the field and now are also working with this newer understanding of ourselves to make it easier for the next gen who's coming in to feel heard and included. And I think that's a responsibility that while I'm a little late to the party, I think it's something I'm very glad at wanting to take. In fact, I have been debating how can create that support group structure or that third space where this community can be built and things like that. So yeah, that's one of the goals of 2026. But yeah, I think it's very important to take the role of advocacy beyond just talking about it to actually into the workplace.
Absolutely. Constantly talking about the right person who comes into our culture, who can fit culturally into my organization. HR talk about culture fit, which is actually problematic because you want somebody who's very different to see what is amiss, or you don't want people to blend into each other. You want everyone to stand out and bring their piece. And I think that's very important, and to rethink culture fit also into the workplace. By the way, last guest is running a space in Bangalore, in Yalanka, which is an online space, which I will share with you for neurodiverse as well as neuroqueer people come together and talk about and create a safe space and discuss how to show up for each other. And there is a lovely space. And yeah, so I think we should all get together and speak and see how we should grow that space further.
Yeah, sure. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Vishnu. It's been lovely to hear your journey. And yeah, there's always a silver lining, and that's what you bring in. And I do want to add that we may advocate, we may be an ally, but the younger generation, as you said, will never listen and they will
Well,
make their mistakes. But I think as long as we talk about ourselves and our failures and our misses, it just makes them know that this is part of life and they can look at us and have those conversations with us.
if nothing else, as much as they might go ahead and make their own mistakes and stuff like that, we don't be as hard on them as our managers were on us. I
Absolutely.
think that's the best thing.
Absolutely. Just better, kinder selves, allowing others to be their selves.
Yep, true
In
enough.
space. Thank you so much for your time, Vishnu. It's been amazing to have
Thank you. Thank you so much and see you soon.
That was Vishnu talking about his life, his journey, his tryst with neurodivergence, and finally getting the labels that he required, and finding the community and space to grow in and build the life that he wants. I hope you find inspiration in his life, in his journey, and I hope if you recognize something, do write in and talk about how Vishnu's story has helped you. And or if you have questions about your neurodivergence, about your challenges, do write in so that we can find the answers and find similar stories for you to just find inspiration. Thank you. This is Ann Thomas, Just Your Normal Misfit.